Hey all, it's Mr. Allen back again with another video. Any support you would show to the channel or the video would be much appreciated. With that, let's get right into it. Today we're going to be doing a video talking about Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal and, the animation and just everything Persona 5 and kind of giving my thoughts and opinions on that. What inspired this video was I have a video like this on the channel. I'm not sure if it'll still be up on the channel or not by the time this is up. I never felt too proud of it, and I just kind of wanted to take another whack at it, see if I could get the video down a little better, see how it would go for me. Let's kind of get right into it. I kind of want to start by talking about the overall story of Persona 5, because it's a chunky one. It's a giant story. It is huge. And there is just a bunch of content in the Persona 5, a bunch of after content and whatnot, so there's a lot to talk about. We start with a nameless protag character you get to take control of in the game, and that of course has a name and whatnot in the anime and manga. He ends up in some trouble for trying to help some lady and then getting blamed for a crime that he didn't do. He ends up on probation and staying with a family friend named Sojiro. Sojiro has a daughter named Futaba that is one of our other main party members and Persona users. She even has her own dungeon later on in the game that involves her family and her mother's kind of the main villain. So the villain's there, but it's not really there because the mom's not really there. So Futaba is kind of the main villain of her own dungeon. She does have a unique persona, and the form of that she is one of the only party members that works on more kind of assistant stuff, similar to like Mitsuru or Rize from Persona 3 or 4. She's a sensory type. She definitely works more for like, helping the party out and stuff like that. Tracking stuff down, stuff like that. Where we meet our other two characters in our first kind of arc, where we meet our first kind of bad guy. Our first bad guy is Kamoshida, a volleyball gym teacher that works at the Sujin High School that our main character gets into. And he's taking advantage, abusing, and just mistreating his students, especially his volleyball students. And we gotta take him down, us and our new Persona users. We meet two other Persona users very quickly, An and Ryoji. He's kind of like the character's new male best friend when he gets to the school. He also quickly unlocks his persona and becomes one of our main party members. And he's definitely the wild card, more comedic relief type, similar to like Junpei from Persona 3 and whatnot. He definitely has that archetype to him. But overall, he's a great character and whatnot. And they're both wrapped up heavily within Kamoshida, that first dungeon, because they both have taken abuse, been mistreated themselves by Kamoshida. Alongside one of my personal favorite side social links and side characters, Mishima also enters our main plot here, where he later will run the Phantom Thieves website and kind of the web presence for the Phantom Thieves. And even though we're not for sure, he low-key kind of knows our characters are the Phantom Thieves by the end of it. At least I kind of think so. I don't really know 100%. You get what I'm saying if you played through his whole social link, but it is one of the better social links worth mentioning, and he kind of does intersect our main plot here. Even though things go way too far, they do end up taking Kamoshida down, and while they're doing this, they meet a talking cat named Morgana. This is our mascot character, a precious, adorable talking cat. Most people love Morgana, but this cat is also fierce and has quite an attitude and a pretty powerful persona in the form of Zoro. He's a great little mascot, very similar to Teddy from Persona 4. I wanted to talk just a bit more about Morgana and what happens with Morgana in the story. While there is a side little story link kind of thing, a pretty compelling story there, where we're trying to figure out what exactly Morgana is. Morgana thinks he's human, but we're not exactly sure. We do get a vague answer, and we vaguely, Morgana is not human and is probably a shadow-like being of some sort, but we don't get a concrete answer, and they're not able to tell us 100% what he is or how he came into existence. Probably some, Velvet Room, magic, flamin'-like hullabaloo, but we don't get any exact confirmation, and that's kind of where his story ends. But he is the one that originally starts spouting things about the Phantom Thieves of Heart and stealing people's heart, and he's the one that not only teaches them how to change people's hearts, teaches them that they could mess up and accidentally hurt people while trying to. He also has all this info and all these terms for like Phantom Thieves and whatnot, and stealing hearts, and he knows how to do all this and use the metanav and stuff like that. And he knows all this weird information,
and we just don't ever get a lot of context to why he knows any of this, or why he calls these things that, and I don't know why none of the characters never decide to grill him more about, hey, why do you know all this, or how did you learn how to steal a heart, or, you know, I don't know if he ever explains it, but I really don't think so. I think all we get is a vague hint or two. And I just kind of wanted to go a bit more into that.
We then get to jump into a few of our other characters. We meet Yusuke, and his main dungeon is Madarame. Madarame is a famous artist that has been a famous artist for a while. He is stealing his apprentice's art, though. None of his art is his. He hasn't been able to do any good art for a long time. There's this one piece constantly referenced throughout his story, but this piece doesn't even end up being his, the most famous piece. Yusuke's mother ends up being the creator of that really, really famous painting, and it really, you know, that just goes to show Yusuke's potential, and that these people were all really taken advantage of, and Madarame needs to be taken down, and he's not a great guy. After that arc, we head into the arc where we've already kind of met the student council class president of the school and whatnot with Makoto. She's already been introduced and been skeptical of our party and whatnot, but at the same time, she doesn't really know why. But she gets dragged into it here, and we end up getting the awesome bank dungeon, and it's cool. I will say this has one of my least favorite villains in the whole thing, but it is a cool dungeon. You know, it's definitely a visual spectacle. We also, of course, at some point in here, because as we go through the story, there's these little segments where the authorities have beat up Joker, taken him in. He's getting questioned by Makoto's sister about the Phantom Thieves, and this kind of just happens incrementally throughout Persona 5's main story. And that does tie into here just heavily because now Makoto's involved in our party and whatnot. I believe after that, that's when Futaba's dungeon takes place, kind of after that, and then we head into Haru's dungeon, where her main bad guy is her dad, and he's a corrupt businessman with corrupt business practices, and they gotta take him down. And things go too far, and he ends up getting his life taken. And it's this big dramatic thing, and it's heartbreaking for Haru as a character. And Haru is a wealthy girl from our school that gets dragged into this, gains her own persona, temporarily runs away with Morgana because our party offends Morgana, and he just decides to run away. She's a great character and a great addition, and I think our final big addition to our main party is Haru. With that, we have all of our Phantom Thieves now, and we're gonna take on our last dungeon. But things are getting real because her father died, such as now people are really starting to see the Phantom Thieves, especially the authorities, as a potential threat. We also get to really know Akechi. We already kind of knew Akechi. He's this young detective guy that has been gunning for the Phantom Thieves, and that's all we really know about him, and that he's a potentially spectacle of our party. But realistically, he also has a persona ability and the ability to use the metanav, and he's the one sneaking behind them and hurting and killing people. And it's also he can frame them and get a good case that'll hopefully look good on his rep. At least that's the vibe we get when it's telling us his motivations and whatnot. While inside the casino dungeon and whatnot, they do get, at least Joker, I think, is the only one that gets apprehended here. And this is kind of where we figure out that that's where all the scenes have been happening with Makoto's sister now is. Eventually, when Makoto's sister leaves, goes to kind of resolve this and hopefully clear their names and whatnot, this is where the multiple endings inside of a Persona 5 base game begin, where in the manga it goes very safe, and this is kind of very similar to the true ending in the game. They clear their names, they defeat Akechi, they defeat all their foes, and they get off relatively scot-free, hopefully still continuing to be Phantom Thieves and continuing to do good and help people. It's a pretty good ending for our characters overall, and again, the game's main ending and the manga definitely go this way, but the anime goes very left field here. The anime just decides that when Akechi addresses our main character in the interrogation room, where usually something keeps Akechi from killing the main character, he just shoots him, kills him. And it's, one thing I'll say that is great about this is it's so shocking. I remember, despite any disappointment in the anime, even though I love the anime, I was like, you know, they need something to spice it up here. I will say this is one thing that spiced it up. I was not expecting that. I did not expect them to go bad ending with it, to kill our main character. Supposedly Akechi gets off free. We don't get any context to if he does, or what happens with our main party that is still around, or if they get apprehended, or what. And it's just kind of a crazy ending in retrospect. No one can say they don't prefer the good ending, especially because of the context with Persona 5 Strikers couldn't have happened if the bad ending happened, you know, stuff like that. Here is kind of where we get into the Royal Plus content, While I don't personally know too much about the new main girl's story, I didn't divulge too much into that when playing Royal. It from what I gather, it's really good, and what I did get to see was pretty good. And she seems like a great character and a great addition to our party that maybe just should have been in the main game and whatnot. But like at the same time, better late than never. We do get probably the best villain in Persona 5, and one of our best Persona villains ever here with our Doctor character. I'm sorry I'm forgetting both of the Royal exclusive characters' names because I'm blanking on them. He has such a charismatic attitude and he's so likable, and that's like the first thing you'll know about him. And then you'll see that he has these, while on some level pure, they get twisted and they become very dark ideologies. And basically he becomes on some, the world needs to be reborn and the world needs to be, reformed in order to be pure and to be good again, and that the world's a mess and that it must, he gets on some like, I'm a god, I need to rebirth the world stuff. And it's some crazy stuff, but at the same time his philosophy is so crazy that seeing it clash with the obviously good philosophy of the Phantom Thieves is just such an awesome thing, and is definitely one of the coolest things in Persona 5, and I would definitely recommend that is the main reason why the Royal Edition is definitely worth over the main, is it definitely wraps it up, in my opinion, even better than the Akechi stuff did at the end of the base Persona 5. So it definitely does help improve, especially the ending of the base Persona 5. So that's why Royal is so good. Sadly, the anime don't really cover this content, so we don't get really to see that. Same thing with the side games, really. Persona 5, the Phantom X, I can't really say too much about. Phantom X just because it's not in America yet, and I don't have access to it, and it's just not fully released. So I just don't want to say too much other than it looks really cool, and I'm hoping it'll be worth talking about on the channel one day.
Let's tell you a little bit about Persona Q2 and the original. It is a similar JRPG. We see the Persona cast and characters in a new art style, and it is still a turn-based JRPG strategy kind of game, but this time it's in the style of another Atlus property, Etrian Honesty. I'm not like a huge fan of those games, but I think it blends pretty well with Persona here. And in the original Persona Q, we only got to see the casts of Persona 3 and 4, kind of in their prime, in a separate universe kind of thing, or a separate like shadow world kind of thing, similar to that of Persona 5 Tactica. The same goes for Persona Q2, and the big difference between the first and the second is in Persona Q2 we get the introduction of the Persona 5 cast, and it's just kind of like a bigger, better version of Persona Q, but they both do have like their own unique stories, their own unique settings, moments, characters, because they do both have also their own original characters that are pretty neat. It's just kind of like all the characters are in their prime, and it's almost like fan fiction-y to an extent, and it is really cool, but it is definitely like just a little Persona side game, and I think it would be really cool if they took a similar idea to this and made it on like a much bigger scale, like a big Persona Q, like with the budget of like Persona 5 or something like that. I feel like that could be really interesting. There's so many ideas they could do with this Persona Q like formula where they, go into like a different world with the Persona characters from different Persona games.
Now, as for Persona 5 Tactica, I also haven't divulged too much into this just because those kind of action strategy RPGs aren't really my thing too much, but overall the game seems really cool, plays really smoothly. I've heard it's pretty cool, but I definitely think it's, maybe they could have made a cooler game if they went a different direction, for sure. I think it is just a little Persona 5 side game, but it does introduce some really interesting concepts and side characters, and even has some interesting reappearances with Akechi and the lady from Royal. It's interesting. It has an interesting villains and concepts and things like that. But overall, I do think it is the weaker side game for sure that actually has its own main story. And I do really like that Tactica has its own main story, even though it does kind of do the whole different universe, so it doesn't really matter kind of thing. We're not even clear if they remember it at the end. They probably don't, and we probably will never address the events that happened in Tactica, at least not to a giant extent or a huge importance extent. While I feel better about Strikers first off just blended really well. Who would have known that the Persona formula would work so well with the Dynasty Warriors formula? But it worked. These games are awesome to play and probably low-key one of my favorites to play. It's really fun. Overall functions really well and is one of the more modern titles, so it has that extra boost in technology that just makes it really pretty and whatnot too. It's visually stunning, just like Persona 5. It does a good job at mimicking the feeling of Persona 5, kind of similar to how I'm seeing with Persona 5 Phantom X. Persona 5 Strikers does a really good job at it. It gives you a really unique continuation kind of story where we get to see basically what we gather is right after the main events of Persona 5. It's like their summer break after or whatnot before some of our characters go to college and the others are going to their last year of high school finally. And it's just kind of like, it actually shows us what would have happened if our party just continued to be the Phantom Thieves, continued to get targets, continued to hang out. What if they went on a summer vacation together, and that's the whole premise. They're going on a summer vacation, place to place, new villains, and the villains, they're pretty decent. Some are better than others, again, kind of like with the base Persona 5. A real standout one to me is just I really like the way they mirrored Madarame and the art storyline with the writer guy that steals people's writing. It's just a really interesting take on basically the same thing, a story of really talented people getting their art stolen and getting taken advantage of. It's just great to see, whether it's the writer guy, the artist guy, the evil banker guy, Kamoshida at the very beginning. It's great to see all these just not great people get taken down. Very satisfying. It's hard not to want the good guys to win here with the Phantom Thieves. We get the addition of some really interesting side characters with that too, with a great detective character, and he's really a standout and even gets his own persona and his own little story arc throughout Strikers, which is just awesome. I'm pretty sure it involves, his kind of family and background a little more, and you get to learn a lot about him. We also meet this AI kind of character named Emma, which has probably one of the best story arcs in Dungeons and Persona 5 Strikers as well. She's a standout character because it's basically the same concept as like Aegis from Persona 3. It's very similar, but done in a very different way and almost with a more modern tone to it, with especially in the last few years, the acceleration and just growth of AI and the conversation of popular media in the last few years. Emma's character and story arc just makes a lot of sense. We mentioned Mishima earlier. I just want to mention a few other standout just side characters that have great stories and social links throughout the main Persona 5 game. There's the medium lady, the shogi lady, the doctor lady, the weapons guy, the politician guy. Again, Mishima himself. There's just a lot of really great little social links and stories to be told and to be found within the actual games, and a lot of those little stories can't actually be retold through the anime or the manga, so I definitely do suggest that those are some of the better reasons to give the game a playthrough if you're ever looking for like a really big JRPG. Because I would also say with that, this is one of my favorite RPGs, one of the best RPGs probably ever, and I really think that as we're going to head into the gameplay of the game now and how I feel about the gameplay and just the overall functionality of the game and the systems and menus and whatnot, the game really kind of stepped the bar up for turn-based JRPGs in general. The gameplay's smooth, the menus are so flashy and crazy and just great looking. That goes from like the systems too, whether it's fusing personas, shadow persona negotiations brought back from SMT, the actual turn-based combat and finding their weaknesses, the exploration, just the walking around the overworld, buying items, whatever it is, they all function really great, really smoothly, and it just kind of really it stepped up the bar for the Persona franchise, especially just because now when you look at the more chibi art style, the more basic menus and basic turn-based gameplay of just the previous games, it did step up the bar a lot, and you can really see this with the release of Persona 3 Reload, where giving it the Persona 5 treatment gave it a whole new life, made me have whole new perspectives on the game, and it's been a great experience to see it get so much love and so much nice treatment, to see all the pretty, stunning visuals, and just the gameplay being so fluid and so entertaining, and there just being, not as much drag, not as much, I'm having to push through this as there was back in OG Persona 3 and 4, where in Persona 5 and, like I said, in Persona 3 Reload, they really fixed that. And there's always something interesting to do. There's always something interesting you're looking forward to. There's always something visually stunning to look at. And with that, let's kind of go into the visuals, because the visuals for Persona are always stunning, and they're some of my favorite anime visuals and video game visuals ever, so I definitely think that this is some of the best character designing, some of the best background design, some of the best monster and creature design, and I would really recommend this game to anyone that likes a good JRPG, likes a good turn-based game. Hell, even if you like anime a lot, or you're just looking for a good anime game, this is a great way to go about it. It definitely has that vibe to it, definitely for sure. Like I said, some of the most top-tier anime designs in the anime or video game industry, in my opinion. There's just so many of these like little systems and little things, whether it's the one more system, the negotiation system. Heck, I'm sure this will be a big one in the future. Special ability systems, stuff like that. Even the fusion system, like I mentioned earlier, it's just all these systems work so well and are so great. And I think they're a great template for where to go. You don't want it to get any worse than that. You just want to continue to improve that, because that was just on a whole nother level than the previous games, even though it is very similar and keeps that similar vibe to the previous games. If you are a huge Persona fan, it will continue to get that itch of Persona for you, even though it definitely tries to stand on its 2 feet and definitely has its own vibe compared to the other two, just like the other two from each other, you know what I mean? I feel the need to address the Velvet Room just a tiny bit, just because I do love the character Igor. Obviously, he's one of the most iconic characters to me personally, and definitely in Persona, and he makes a pretty crazy appearance in the main story of Persona 5 with his own little story arc towards the end. Basically, he's not really Igor, and something bad's happened to Igor, and something apparently bad happened to the Velvet Room attendants there and whatnot. You get to fight and defeat the imposter Igor, and you kind of get to free them. Basically, you free them and whatnot. The two attendants combined together into one attendant, and apparently they were like split in half, and they were like two different parts of the same person and whatnot, and it's weird. Overall, it doesn't ruin Igor's thing. It doesn't ruin the Velvet Room. The Velvet Room's still awesome. The jail cell Velvet Room is still really cool looking and very nicely designed. Yeah, I just felt the need to mention all that.
It's definitely also worth mentioning that the Persona soundtracks do not fail here, that Persona 5 has an awesome soundtrack. I kind of think Atlus and all of the Persona games, pretty much from entry to entry, have great soundtracks altogether. A little biased here maybe. I think it's probably some of the best video game soundtracks the Persona series got, and I think they really nailed it with Persona 5, and I think I love how it's so similar to Persona 3 and 4 soundtrack, but so different at the same time, because that's the best way I describe it. Is it's very similar but very different. It's very unique. There's nothing quite like it musically that I can describe it. There's things that are similar out there in the world, but nothing quite hits quite the same as Persona music for sure. I think there's a good bunch of tracks here that have added a good amount of value to the overall Persona track list catalog when it comes to them just having a good amount of solid tracks from the Persona series. Not all of them are even from the main game or Royal necessarily. Even side games like Tactica and Strikers have really solid tracks, and even some really solid original tracks and whatnot, and reprised tracks and remixed. Same thing with the anime and whatnot too. Just all together, the soundtracks for Persona 5 turned out really well and really nice, and are definitely comparable to that of Persona 3 and 4, which just have phenomenal and amazing soundtracks themselves. And as we get new iterations of them and stuff all the time, it feels like the soundtracks for each one of these games just keeps getting better and better. So overall, soundtracks are definitely valid for me from Persona 5. I'd give it, 9 out of 10. It hits most of the time. It's pretty rare I get a track that I'm like, I'm not really vibing with this out of the Persona series. So they got some great music here for you.
But with that, last final recommendation for this game, I think it's a great game, a great series. I think Persona overall is, but everything Persona 5 is too, and it's definitely, most of it is worth checking out. I'd give everything from the side stuff to the middle stuff probably it's like a solid 7 to 8 out of 10 experience at any given time. It even kind of goes above that at times for me, but that's just more of a personal thing. I feel like that's giving it too much credit, because there's definitely some moments where I'm like, ooh, that line was weird, or ooh, maybe we shouldn't have done that, or there is a few things, a few nitpicks here and there. But overall, the game's a great game, and I would definitely recommend it to pretty much any anime fan, any gamer, any JRPG lover, whatever it is. It's a great game, and I hope this accomplished my goal of kind of redoing that video better, coming across more clearly, and I'm hopefully producing a better video for y'all. That'll be all I have to say today, and y'all have a great day.